Hi, welcome to Rhetoric Rabbit Hole. Thanks for joining us. We got Jacob Wilson, my good friend.
Um,
How are you doing today?
I'm brilliant. So this weekend's been really good, and I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, so this took a bit of finagling just to get everyone together. So I'm really glad we were able to that the stars aligned and we were able to make this happen. I also got David, Phil, and Neif today. How you guys doing?
Yo,
Doing
yo.
well.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and give the floor to Jacob if you want to go ahead and show us some stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to demonstrate two things that show influence. When most people think of influence, they think of it as a kind of dream logic kind of thing where you can vaguely influence people to do things. But this is very precise and very well calculated. It isn't always 100% because that is just the nature of influence. Some people can be influenced more than others. It's not a bad thing either way, whether you're easy to be influenced or not. Um, but the more people there are, the easier it is. So hoping this works perfectly. Um, so I'll start off with these. These are two piles of tarot cards. There's five of them, and they're just the same in each pile. So I need to choose someone to help me. Neif, would you like to help me? Can you see things clearly on my screen?
Neef, we don't got your audio.
There we go. Sorry.
Ah,
Um, I see one deck that looks darker than the other. Actually, I can't.
yeah. So when it comes to actually showing things, I'll hold them up really
All
close.
right, all right.
First of all, can you just choose one of these? One of these is going to be mine. One of them is going to be yours. So can you choose which one you want to be yours?
I will take the dark deck. The
The
one that,
dark one.
yeah, the one I
Okay,
clicked.
so this one is mine. I'm going to mix mine up. Sorry, I don't want to knock that one about. I've mixed my one up. And if you were here, you'd be able to do this physically, but unfortunately you're not. So I'm going to go through card by card, and you're going to say whether you want to keep it or switch it with the next card. So first one, keep or switch.
Keep,
Keep, keep or switch.
keep,
Keep, keep or switch.
switch.
Switch. Now, just to show it very clearly. Okay, and there's only one left, so we're going to have to keep that. And one more time. Keep or switch.
Switch.
Switch. Keep or switch.
Keep,
Keep.
keep.
Keep or switch.
Switch.
Switch. And then that's the last one, so this goes down. And to make it a little bit more difficult, Phillip, can you join in and do two as well? Keep or switch.
Switch.
Switch. Keep or switch.
Switch.
Switch. And then there's only one left, so I have to keep. One more time. Keep or switch.
Keep. Switch. And then keep.
Keep. And there's one left, so keep. Okay. Praying this works. The first cards match. You see that?
Okay. Yeah.
Second cards match.
Wow.
Third cards, both justice.
Well done, man.
Second to last, both the hangman. And the last ones are both the Queen of Wands. So yeah, that's an example of like precise influence. It wasn't vague. It wasn't getting you to choose something. It was deciding a series of keep, switch, keep, switch, keep, switch. And a lot of people don't realize that influence can get so precise, even from small things. The next example, because it's near Halloween, I'll use the Satanic Bible. I don't know if any of you guys own this, but you can see that it's...
Is that Crowley's Satanic Bible or is that Rushdy's Satanic Bible?
This is Anton LaVey's.
Leviticus. Okay, all right, dig it.
Yep. And you see it's not doctored or anything. It's the
No, I'm just
the original.
I
Yeah.
was actually having a discussion the other day about satanic different.
So I'm just going to turn this up because I can't hear you properly.
Yeah. If we could get a little more audio when you need.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
So damn loud over here.
I'm going to use this very garish golden deck of cards, actually made of gold, as a kind of number generator. So first, David, can I use you? I'm going to go across like this and touch.
Use him. Use him as you
And-
please.
You're going to say stop on some card.
All right.
Say it with the stress.
Stop.
This one?
Yeah.
Sure.
Actually, the previous one right before that.
This one.
Yeah, right there.
Okay. You can look at it.
All right.
Okay. If I always put it down, it's okay if I see it. That's fine. And Alex, you'll do the next one because I haven't used you next. Haven't used you yet.
Use me.
Yes.
And stop.
This one here.
One back one.
One backwards. So this one here.
Right there.
Sure?
Yep.
Okay. So again, look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You can see all right. Okay. So you have a 9 and a 5. And Alex, you can choose whether you want it to be 95 or 59. Because it's going to be a page in here.
59.
59. Okay. Fairs. On page 59, I'm going to go for the top left word. So the first word on the page. So let's go to page 59. And so first we'll show that it's page 59 I'm on. Is it focusing?
Yeah, focus.
Okay, and the top word on that page is, can you read that?
Diabolus.
Yep. Now, I don't know if you notice, I have this big bottle right here, and it's remained there. There's nothing in my hands. I'm going to unscrew the top. And do you see in the top here, there's a little bit of paper?
Yeah.
And empty?
What the fuck, man?
That's nuts. Well done.
Brilliant.
Okay, well, I'll turn my camera off now and clean up this mess. But yeah, thank you for participating. And that's a demonstration of 2 different kinds of influence.
That's awesome.
This for the
You
rest
didn't.
of the podcast.
That wasn't any sleight of hand. That was.
No, that was all pure. Yeah, no sleight of hand. That's why you're so close to my hands.
You're just working me like a puppet.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, man.
The main thing is that
I'm glad that you used I guess we put it non-sleight of hand. I hesitate to say magic trick, but you know the term of what it is. It ends up being mathematic. I'm glad that you used that to talk about influence, because what you did was you managed to actually pull the ideas out of a mythical place and bring them a little bit more on a science plane. Because if you were to do mythics, then you leave a lot of holes in.
Yeah, a lot of people do influence things like this and then trying to pass it off as genuine magic or something like it. And to be fair, the people doing it, they might believe that they are actually, they might have tricked themselves somehow. But yeah, these kinds of things can be used for rather large scale, like wherever we go in the modern day, we're being influenced somehow, some way. A lot of the times that is good, being influenced, like not to smoke, for example, like in public spaces where it has like the no smoking signs. Most people don't register that there are no smoking signs. They just kind of know the general areas that you can't. But it can be used in more malicious ways, like getting a certain group of people to vote a certain way or getting people to buy certain products. And there are also certain factors that make people more likely to be influenced. So one of them is if there's people around them. So for example, when I do things on stage, I get a group of people up on stage with me. A group of people are a lot easier to influence. And if they're on stage, they get nervous and they'll automatically look to the person who is most confident for guidance. In everyday life, that'll usually be a boss or something. While on stage, it would be me because I am comfortable being on stage and usually they are quite nervous.
Right. You set the conditions.
Yeah, exactly. And there are many ways to set conditions so that people are more likely to be influenced. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. Like I say, I think it's part of human nature, and be like I can be influenced, and it's mostly to do with how we are socially. It's a good thing. If we were unable to be influenced, I think we would essentially be like reptile brained, which would not make for a fun society.
It sounds real similar to the argument that people make, and a lot of people can take it wrong when you talk about the instinctive idea to be prejudiced.
Yeah,
People are like, I'm not prejudiced, I don't judge, but the fact is that you do,
yeah,
because you're a living thing and you're trying not to die, for one thing, and so you have to
Yeah.
judge the surroundings. You make a prejudgment looking out the window before you go outside. It's sunny, I think it's hot. I walked outside, it's fucking cold. My prejudice was wrong.
yeah.
Hence
Right.
all the way down to what we can control.
And
So
I
yeah,
agree with you there. Prejudice can be a good thing if used correctly. The reason we have these heuristics are for survival reasons, and being judgmental as well. Two of the best people I know are judgmental. They just have very good judgments. They have refined their judgments over years to be useful. Yes, well,
Um,
that was my bit.
I think this is a good segue to get into what we wanted to talk about next. So you and I, Jacob, just recently had a very lengthy conversation about the future overall, but different ways to navigate that future. And you had an interesting system that you had been bouncing around.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be interesting if you bounced it off of these guys as well. So I want to go ahead and give you a minute uninterrupted to sort of lay that out, and then we can make it like a general discussion.
Okay. Well, I'll start with a small disclaimer. I am no expert in economy. I am no
Yeah, we're just
expert in social studies. I am unqualified, and these are the opinions of a layman. These are what basically it comes from my common sense and seeing issues in the world today. And I think there are a lot of issues in the world today, and we have come a very long way from going from feudalism to capitalism mostly, and it's made society better overall. But it's human nature to keep wanting to refine things and make them better. So just because we've made a functioning system doesn't mean we should strive for a better economy, for a better livelihood for everybody. And I think a good system is one that makes the most people happy. If there's a system, and by system I'm talking about economies mostly here, but it could be voting systems, like systems in general. If it makes a few people very happy, that is not better than making lots of people slightly happy. I think it should be fair for it to be for it to be a useful thing to add to society. So yeah, those are kind of the principles I'm basing this off, and the critiques I have with capitalism as a current system. I think there's so many issues it can be hard to talk about them because there's so many, and a lot of the issues are also almost seen as a positive. They're spun, and there's lots of excuses for them. So I'll start talking about this in a more rigid way. Okay. Okay. So under our current system of capitalism, it's not capitalism isn't everywhere in the world, but generally is an unfair system. It allows people to get power through luck and exploitation. And I'm going to use power as a kind of term for money because it isn't always money that is power, but money is power. If you have enough money, then you'll be able to do whatever you want. If you have enough, if you had in your bank account the net worth of the United States, you'd be able to pretty much do whatever you want. So money is power. And one of the issues with capitalism is that it allows people who are not voted power to gain it. For example, Jeff Bezos, he has a lot of money and no one voted for him to have that power. And yet he has the power to do essentially whatever he wants. Bill Gates, he has the ability to donate massive amounts to different organizations, such as the World Health Organization. He donated more than the US this year. And he has a lot of influence over the World Health Organization because of that. But no one ever voted for him to have this influence. So if you believe in democracy, then you should believe that there should be a cap on how much money you can make. Because if you're making more than that, it means that you have too much influence that no one voted for. Or maybe put in a system where you vote for people to be rich. Essentially, that's what the government is. You're voting for a certain group of people to have enough money to enforce laws. Is that agreed on so far? Does anyone have any disagreements there?
No disagreements here.
Okay, so those are like the
Well, terminology wise, I don't agree that a government is there for people to vote on. That's not at all what a government is. I mean, that's might be what it was perceived to be or what they're trying to convince us as, but that is not at all what a government is.
Okay.
But I understand what you're saying. I mean,
and
there's a lot of what you're saying I agree with as far as terminology wise. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I do apologize if I say certain words wrong.
No, it's not a problem. I appreciate that you're as humble about this because I'm not used to talking to people as level about it and saying, hey, this is just an idea. I'm just throwing this out. So yeah, continue. I don't want to interrupt you. I don't want to stop you.
Oh, thank you. So these are essentially the axioms of my idea and why I think my idea would well, I wouldn't say it's necessarily mine, but why this would be a useful step in the right direction. Now, it's also important to note that when it comes to how to plan a government, how to plan the economy, how to make decisions based on taxes, there are correct answers. They are not always up to opinion. You can say this decision will improve my economy, and you can do research to simulate what different things will do, and then choose the correct option. It's not necessarily a political matter, because in my view, politics is generally more opinion based. It might be just an economic matter where there is an actual factual correct answer on how to plan your economy. And there are measures of how successful different countries are. For example, social mobility is a measure of how easy it is to go between the classes. It's a measure of meritocracy usually. So in a country where it doesn't matter if you're poor, you can learn a skill, market your skill, and then work your way up the ladder and get rich. That is a sign of a meritocracy. And every country is ranked on their meritocracy using the social mobility index. And at the moment, Denmark's number one. Denmark is number one for several reasons. It has free education, totally. If you're an older person, education, they'll pay you to have an education because you might be an adult and not be able to get education without working. So in Denmark, they'll pay you as if it's a job for you to get educated. Rather than focusing fully on the youth, it is free for the youth. They want to get the older people an education so that everyone has a chance to get a good job. Another thing is that they pay everyone generally more in Denmark. And I'm using Denmark also as an example because I lived there for 2 years. So I've kind of seen what it is like over there. And everyone, like, you earn more if you're a doctor than if you work in a shop. But if you do work in a shop, you will get a living wage. You'll be able to buy a house.
Is there a minimum wage?
There is a minimum wage, yes.
Okay.
However, you can sometimes get more from benefits than from the minimum wage, which people in Denmark like to cite as a problem. However, it doesn't seem to be too big of an issue when you look at it from a standpoint. Like, technically, you can play the system and get more by not working. However, people don't. People feel because of social pressures, people feel like not working is bad, so they'll go out and get a job. Same reason why you don't need to become a doctor to earn a living wage, but people do because it gives you, it makes them feel good about themselves. And some people like helping people.
There are certainly some people like that, sure.
Yeah, there are some people who do just like working the system and don't like working. And I know a few in real life. I wouldn't say they're bad people. They just they don't enjoy working, and that is something where lazy people are things that people tend to judge them very harshly. And I'm not going to comment whether that's good or bad. I think if you're having a country, you're going to have to plan for lazy people who just don't want to work. And you might think that if someone's lazy, then they should just die because they're not willing to work for what they, consume.
That is your word,
Um,
what you can produce. That's
yeah, I think.
I will
Yeah.
I'll have to tell you my one of my tundra stories based around that right there.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing. I want to bring it back. So uh, I just want to put the focus back on why don't you lay out your system?
Yeah, sorry, this was all groundwork.
No, you're
for
good. You're
Why
good.
I think my system will be good.
I can just start talking and like get on
Yeah.
tangents and ramble and lose my point. So
Yeah, thank you.
you back on point.
So in my view, a government is essentially a company of sorts with a bit of an erratic CEO due to voting, but it's essentially a company with a bunch of sub companies inside of it, which are the actual companies that you go and buy things from. And you can essentially run a country like a business. In my view, that's kind of what the Axiomith is based on. And because of that,
Real
you
quick,
can.
are you saying as your ideal?
I'm saying that I think a government's goal is
All right.
to earn money like a business,
Okay,
and therefore,
I'm just trying to clarify.
yeah.
And you're saying with sub companies, does that mean all other would be private business?
Yeah, I'm saying
Okay.
private businesses work. They don't actually work within the government, but they work within the laws that the government sets. So I'm counting them as a sub company.
All right.
And you can simulate what would be good for a country within a business. So, for example, most companies work on a kind of monarch system with the CEO being a king, and then they divvy up land between different lords, which would be the different department stores, or whatever they're using, suppliers, for example. Some companies work on a more communist system, like Walmart, for example. They have a planned economy. Um, uh, Planned economy is essentially where they have computers crunch the numbers and see what should go where. And obviously, everything is one brand, their own company brand, like communism. And the difference between that kind of communism and the communism that came before that was really horrible is that they have computers that can exactly allocate resources where they are needed. And they also have the goal of being good. They're not like a dictator. They can't be an evil company. I mean, that can be debated, but on the whole, companies are not allowed to just enslave their workers. So there are some regulations there that make the companies kind of like the best version of communism that could exist. Amazon is another example. The way it works is
Real quick,
Hmm?
I want to clarify. You're saying that former versions of communism were ineffective basically due to the lack of the technology, like
I'm
not
saying
having
two things
computers to
due
be
to
able to.
the
I
lack
mean,
of
I understand it if that. I just want to make sure that that's what you're
yeah.
saying. Now that we
Um,
have computers that can actually process the data that needs to be processed in order to make something like that work, it can work now.
yes, I think there's two issues with communism in general. Having
I,
one,
I would also just like to make a point real quick. What we're talking about at this point is not actually communism anymore. We're talking about a robot dictatorship because
yeah, I'm talking about planned economy. That people have no say in where resources are
right.
allocated. The computers do it for them.
So
But people
by definition, we're not actually talking about communism. It's actually a robot is allocating resources.
Yes, and I also don't really like saying communism because it has a lot of bad connotations, and I don't
Right.
want to be seen as a
Yeah,
communist.
no, No, I understand what you're saying because a lot of people will jumble up the terminology, and also when you're talking about economy and systems of economy and a government, there is a break there because, well, let me put it this way: there's more of a connection there between when you speak of a method of economy, you also have to speak of a method of enforcement of that economy.
Yeah,
All right, so that's kind of where I'm at with that, but we can get into
I
that
will take
past
that
that
into
if you're
account.
right. If you're talking about the economic system, that's fine. Just lay on the economic system, regardless of how it's enforced, and
Mm.
then after that, we can get into the nitty gritty of how it gets enforced, because that's usually where
Yeah.
the shit breaks down.
Yeah, indeed. Like a lot of things work in theory, but in practice, they're impossible to enforce. So my main argument is that if you look at companies like Walmart, like Amazon, the way they work is the reason they're so efficient and they don't waste resources is that if they realize, say, socks are selling really well in one village and then really badly in another, their computers will automatically request it gets shipped to different places rather than having to go straight through the supplier, and everything comes from the main suppliers, which means there isn't competition between different departments to different stores to try and get the most product from suppliers. There's essentially a coordination between all the information, all the different departments, and it makes things a lot more efficient. To contrast this, we can look at Sears, which is a company that tried to go for a capitalist company. They made their departments kind of compete with each other with the capitalist mindset of it'll make them all better. They'll all innovate, they'll all try and outcompete each other. And in theory, that would seem to work. In practice, it meant that lots of places got overstocked, lots of places got understocked, and a lot it caused a lot of wasted resources with the actual stores because they wouldn't communicate with their sister stores. They wouldn't say when they needed something, and they also wouldn't talk with the main company. They outsourced a lot of their jobs from the main company to cheaper alternatives, and rather than making a communication a goal between stores, they made it competitive, and it caused a lot of weird issues as well with the magazine, where like you'd see dirt bikes next to wedding dresses because they were competing with space on the magazine. It did not do well for the company, and it lost a lot of money. There was a lot of wasted resources, and it also meant that the richer stores, the stores that were doing the most efficiently, just absolutely trampled the smaller stores, which I think you can see the comparisons I'm about to make with actual companies in our current society. Rich companies tend to stay rich, poor companies struggle. It is possible to gain money, gain momentum, climb up the ladder, things like that, but it requires a lot of luck. It does not require pure skill, and um, it also requires a lot of overcoming a lot of unseen barriers. There are lots of studies showing the kind of inherent human biases when it comes to buying products, when it comes to who you're going to hire. And these small biases have massive impacts when you give people pure free choice. Capitalism promotes making money over pretty much anything else, over innovation. And you only need to look at the slew of crappy sequels. Companies are more likely to make a crappy sequel than something risky and original. In health, now, for example, with health, sorry, I'm rambling a bit here, but companies will be fine selling unhealthy food as long as it makes them money, even if it costs society as a whole in medical care. This isn't so much of an issue in America where you pay for your own medical care, the government does not pay for it. But that's an example. There are things the government does pay for, and
Let me
like,
interject real quick.
yeah, go for
Um, Health, dietary, and the government, quote unquote, not paying for healthcare here
it.
is a huge fucking problem here.
Yeah,
It is one of our number one problems, but it is masked over, and that's why when the rest of the world sees it, they don't understand. It is our number one, probably our number one problem. It's been since the 70s. I'll get into that later.
Okay, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
But my main point is that if you go under a capitalist system, a few individual companies or people will get very wealthy, and it will seem like everyone is able to do that. However, most people, the average person, is not going to have a very good time, and it also promotes things that will make people rich, but it will cost society as a whole. It will make your population, say, unhealthy or poor. And once again, to contrast this, you can look at countries like Denmark. Basically, all of Scandinavia seems to do everything relatively correct, and they do have a capitalist system. However, they're also extremely socialist when it comes to taxes, when it comes to um, allocating resources. Their tax is insanely high, by the way. It's about 50% at a minimum. And they really heavily tax their rich people. And they put basically all the. Sorry, someone say that?
What country are we talking about?
Denmark.
Denmark. Okay.
But basically, any Scandinavian country, Sweden, Norway, they all do similar things.
Taxes
And they're
are insane in those countries.
Yes,
Like insane.
they are. And some people see that as a bad thing. But because all that money goes straight back to the people, if you like, people don't care. You don't really notice the half your money going to the government, because the government allocates it so nicely. And there's a million and one social programs there to get help, to get free healthcare, to get free education.
So,
Uh,
can I interject real quick? Is that when you say you don't notice the government taking half your money because they reallocate it so well? When you say that, do you feel like that's a personal anecdote, or is that the general consensus?
I have not met anyone who's complained about taxes in Denmark, but that is still anecdotal because I didn't do a survey of the whole of Denmark.
Right. Yeah.
However, the general attitude seems to be you earn what you earn. Like in Denmark, you're also paid more on average. So it kind of balances out. Like um, rather than it, you are getting paid less because half the money is going to the government. However, you don't really see it as you're getting paid less because that's just what you're getting paid. You know, you don't think, oh, it would be nice if I could double this.
This is one of the reasons why using other countries to compare to really any other country is faulty as anything, especially using America. One of the biggest arguments with Scandinavian countries is you got to look at, people bring up all the things that they have in common, but one of the things that they leave out is the population size, the um, lack of racial diversity. All of those countries are extremely, and I despise use the term because I don't like racial terms, white. And when I say white, I mean in the views of the world and society.
Yep.
They are extremely white countries. And so when a lot of people say you start jumping into the grounds of, you're starting to sound like somebody, from Germany a long time ago, people start getting real worried because they're like, well, you're saying that everybody should be like these people, these toe-headed white people running around that are all living perfect. And
I actually agree with you a lot there. I mean, in Denmark, it's something ridiculous. Like 89% of people have their ancestry in Denmark or another Scandinavian country. When I went there over 2 years, I saw 2 Islamic people, and I'm pretty sure those are the only non-white people I saw. And I traveled around the country. I didn't stay in one place.
Wow.
It's like the place for me.
Was that sorry? But I will say they don't discourage foreigners from going there. I mean, maybe socially, but not legally. So it just seems to be, I'm not sure why there is a lack of diversity there, because they're doing all the things every other country is doing. I think it's because they're maybe less known.
That's where we're going to drop your debut, Phil.
When people are thinking of places to immigrate to, which leads to diversity, I guess people think of like England, like America. I don't actually understand why there is a lack of diversity in Denmark and the other Scandinavian countries.
There's a lot of I can get into that. I don't want to jump off of your topic, of your breakdown.
I will quickly.
I just want to interject, but I can bring that up later. I can get into that, and I can tell you one of my reasoning behind it.
You got
nice.
Got about a minute and a half, Neif, and then we're gonna take a break and come back.
Cool deal.
Okay, I'll just quickly finish off by saying I don't think Denmark, the Scandinavian countries, are the model of what to be. I think they're a good step in the right direction, but I think we can do a lot better. And I think that'd be a massive overhaul of the system and turning it into a planned economy. So there's only one brand of everything, government brand. It won't impede on freedom, at least it shouldn't, because you can still travel wherever you want. It would stop random businesses, which it might make you feel uncomfortable because you're always used to people can make their own businesses, and there are lots of diversity in businesses. But you have to realize that there's not really as much diversity in businesses as it seems. Take Apple, for example. There's usually a few companies that have a big monopoly, and they use that to their advantage to make more money. Like Apple taking away the headphone jack and then selling you special earphones. That was ridiculous. That was not.
And we're gonna have to take a break and come back in just a second. I'll send you guys another Zoom link.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off like that. And we're back. Before we went to break, Jacob was telling us about his plans for a robot dictatorship.
Essentially.
In which a robot reallocates resources for us. And you were saying that this is a system Walmart's implemented. And
Amazon and most major companies that have access to a lot of data.
And in the break, Phillip had an epiphany, a light bulb, a spark of brilliance, if you will.
I will.
Phillip?
It was quite brilliant, if I do say so myself. So what I feel like we need to do as the American people is we need to band together and create what we will call the Cybercratic Party. And that will be everything is run by computers completely 100%. We'll get rid of cash and we'll actually use it was your suggestion. Dogecoin seems pretty legit since I own stock in Dogecoin.
You said Bitcoin and I said no.
I said Bitcoin. Dogecoin's much better. Yeah. And since I own stock in it, it makes sense to play that. Right?
I mean, yeah. Come on now. Thank you, Keith.
Yes.
I mean, upon this new Cybercratic party, I'm going to go ahead and jump the gun and, nominate myself as, a candidate, but not to run as the head of it.
Right. The head of it can only be the computer, though.
Right.
That's the thing. Yeah.
I just want to be the prime minister. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Will there be like a
I just want to be. I vote myself as treasurer. I'll handle all the resources and money.
The vice president would be a great programmer. But yeah, I mean, in my view, I do think very highly of computers. They don't tend to make mistakes. They're very good at calculating things that we don't have time for, and they don't get bias. I think computers are. I mean, someone is making and programming the computers and maintaining them, but I think letting computers allocate resources for us in everyday scenarios would be quite synergetic. Like it would make the whole country work so closely knit and well together that I think it would actually improve the economy a lot. But I might be wrong. I might be totally. I'm very willing to change my mind if there's some fatal flaw.
I have a lot to say. One thing.
Real quick, how familiar are you with artificial intelligence?
I know it from a mathematical standpoint. I've never built an AI. I have a friend who has built AI, but only simple AI. And I am not necessarily sure that AI would need to be used for this endeavor because it's resource allocation. It doesn't really require too much creativity. Although
It
All right,
requires
I'm just
generosity.
trying to I'm fielding your understanding,
mm,
so that way if I'm
Yeah.
talking about things later, I
yeah,
know
yeah.
where you're at.
I only am really familiar with maths, not computer science.
So something we talked about before, I think. So first of all, there's a lot more that comes into play for a country than a company. I understand running a country like it's a company, but it's literally not the same thing. There is more factors at play besides allocating resources, right? So you could use it. I understand using an AI for that aspect of it, but you would still need a system of governance, right? Or would you be using AI for that as well?
It sort of varies. So the computer is used so that every store, because every store would be government owned in this kind of ideal. So the computer is more of a means of allocating resources so that people get what they want and there's no famishes. One of the big issues with pretty much any economic system is distribution. There's usually enough of things to go around, but it's distributed very poorly. And a computer can literally just solve that problem. It knows where things need to be. If you say, oh, there's this many people in this place, they need to have this many things each, the computer can just do that for a whole country. Um, there would need to be a government obviously setting laws, maintaining things. There need to be humans at some point. Um, Computers can't make laws. Um, However, I think
Artificial intelligence definitely can make laws,
yeah, that is true. I just
and
question the
here in America, it has.
has it? Oh, really? That is fascinating. I know artificial intelligence made music. I did not realize they have become lawmakers. Um,
This goes back to your opening display about influence.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I just think under a system where people are not worrying about distributing things. Now, I will say that a big issue of this practically is that it loses a lot of jobs. It loses pretty much all logistic jobs. And it gets replaced with essentially computer maintenance. However, in this system, there would be a lot of, it would be very cheap to get resources from one place to another. It wouldn't be like, because at the moment, capitalism kind of relies on a pinball system of like companies existing and then allocating things, but then kind of randomly, and there's no organization to it because it's a free market. In this planned economy, everything works very tightly together, so it's a lot cheaper to get places to and fro. And even though it puts a lot of people out of work, in theory, you might be able to make food essentially free because there's not really any need to charge them for the cost of like
It is.
production. Huh?
Food is free.
Food is free. Oh well, yes, you can grow it and things.
Right. For the most part.
Yeah, you can
Just
grow
raise
food,
it. I mean,
but most people are too busy to grow food and cook their own food and
doing what?
things like that.
Which
They're busy doing what? Working to go make money to go purchase food that they could be growing and
yeah.
cooking.
Yeah, I see. I have a big issue with the work culture in the world at the moment. It's used to make a lot of people seem very worthless, and people who are seen as productive members of society usually aren't happy. They don't have enough free time to do what they want, and they usually are not living so healthily because they don't have the time to live healthily. And the people who really take care of themselves and actually have enough money to really enjoy life tend to be rich people who have a bit too much. But once again, you might want to disagree with me on that.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not going to debate whether if that system were already in place, would it be efficient? I don't know. It sounds like Walmart's got some numbers on that and
Yeah.
their predictions on it. I don't know. But I think, and this is something we've talked about already, Jacob, but I think the biggest critique I have of this system, well, two major critiques. Uh, One, you're looking at equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity. You're saying everyone should be happy in the end. I think that is perhaps. I mean that's. I mean obviously that's a good ideal, but when we talk about
On that note, first and foremost, what a government is not here to guarantee happiness.
Mm.
it sounds like Jacob's
Nothing
system
can.
would be though that it would be taking that role on
And,
itself.
that truly is impossible. You cannot guarantee happiness because that's objective. Some people's happiness
Right.
is their foot on another man's
Yeah.
throat, and that's
That is true. Some people's happiness may rely on like murdering a lot of people, and the government can't allow for that. But what it can do is ensure most people's happiness. So, sure, it cannot cater to every person's individual needs, but a government, in theory, could make sure everyone has enough food and shelter and enough freedom to do things that they could
What
possibly enjoy.
yeah.
Uh,
What
yeah,
it sounds like you're saying is there are things we all agree are good, like eating and breathing.
yeah. And
Yeah.
a government can provide those things. It can't provide niches, but I mean, the way capitalism works right now is pretty good. I mean, it provides you with enough money to do things you do enjoy. Like the government is not going to provide free rock climbing in case you want rock climbing, but it provides the money to do so. Um,
Right. So my other critique of your system is I just don't know how it would be implemented, which maybe I'm just narrow-sighted, but I don't trust any system of government on earth today to take that system and actually apply it. I think a lot of them would lie and redistribute things at their own whim. They'd say we're using this AI, but instead they
well, I that's the good harsh over breakdown on that.
mm,
As far as saying, Alex is, the equality outcome, and I think what he's trying to say is that the an AI or a computer system, and I didn't really want to break off onto the AI thing too much. I just wanted to see where you were familiar
yeah, my view on the AI
with.
thing is more of it's the
Right,
computer in this system would be a tool that can do things that human can't do.
right,
It wouldn't be a system of management,
right.
really.
Um, if you, because I don't want to come back at you with just an overview blast of the standard thing, and it's good that you're staying away from a lot of the terminology. You don't want to get tossed into the idea of communism or socialism or this or that,
Yeah.
but it's also counter to when you're using the term capitalism.
Yes, true.
And that's but I don't want to get too much into semantics because I understand what you're saying. A lot of people misunderstand me when I get into that.
Yeah,
uh,
I'm trying to define things as I go in
right,
case I'm using
right.
the incorrect terms.
yeah.
And people want to put me under the flag of an anarcho-capitalist,
Mm,
and I don't actually even like putting ism on the back of anarchy, because the ism is where you begin to start to convolute things.
yep.
When you ismify, capitalism is viewed now as an interest. That's how I feel that it is all about, like you said, capitalism is about making profit, and it's only about profit ahead of everything. And that's not actually what it is. Just like when people say, well, socialism is about the equality, everybody's getting the equal thing. And I've had people argue that socialism was literally about destroying racism
Mm,
in in the economy or something, and everybody's getting convoluted. When you look at a system of economy, it is not a system of government.
yep.
Okay. It is the system that is being enforced by the government. The
Yep.
problem, and this is the common thing that, a lot of people that believe in socialism say, well, it never worked before. And a lot of them will agree that communism isn't right, but socialism will work. But they don't understand that socialism can only be enforced through a communism. A
Yeah.
communist government. It just doesn't, it won't work any other way.
Yep.
Capitalism is the least enforced. What we have in America is not pure capitalism. We do not have a free market at all. It is so highly regulated. All right. And a lot of the things people point out at capitalism, they're really pointing at our failed government, our federal government, the failure of it, where it regulates.
Just a quick
everything.
example of that. Would that be like people critiquing, like just misinterpreting like capitalism? Like, say drugs, for example, you're not allowed to sell those legally, and people might blame that on capitalism when it's actually very unrelated to capitalism. Capitalism would be fine with you selling whatever.
Right. Well, this is the idea. Capitalism has to do more with you have the right to trade with whomever for whatever.
Mhm.
With no third party regulation. It views an economic system, true anarchist view your government system. There should be no government because I don't need anyone. If I'm making a decision between myself and, Alex, there's no need for Phillip to have any kind of say in that decision.
Yeah, Phillip doesn't even need to know about it.
Now, if we're standing on the ground that Phillip pisses on, his pissing ground, and and that's why I believe in property right. I don't believe it needs to be enforced by government.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that instinctive animals understand this in the wild.
Yeah, animals protect their territory.
If you see bear marks on a tree, don't hang around there or your ass is going to get fucked up. And nobody's going to get mad at that bear for it. Nobody's going to blame the bear and say the bear was evil and he had horrible intent or he was racist.
And it's on you that you just didn't know that was the bear's fur.
It's on you. And and then you get into the government where, and that's a good point, Alex, because the government has this thing about ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Right.
And this is where I'm gonna jump over to the AI thing when I'm telling you about
AI.
AI.
That's a question about that.
Yeah.
In America, is ignorance of law not a legal excuse? Because in England, it is definitely.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Well, you can use it as
if you have a good enough attorney.
Right. Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't understand is when you see a case, they're like, this got thrown out because of this or this got. All that's bullshit. You have to read the legal outcomes of an actual case and you will see how much bullshit we are fed by the media about what happens. Stuff gets dropped and people get charged and things get dropped for completely different reasons than we're told. Because you find out that the media does not have to tell you the truth. The government technically does, but the problem is the government enforces itself. It has the monopoly on force. So you have, in essence, me saying, of course, I'm telling you the truth. If you don't think I am, I will check myself out and throw myself in jail. If I were to break that law, of course not. So, and that's another anarcho thing is to bring up, the monopoly on power, the monopoly on violence. People don't understand violence isn't just, me running up to somebody and hitting them. Violence is me forcibly starving them.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's a great
Blocking
point.
them from going to do what they want to do.
Yes.
At some point it becomes violent. If they don't want to be violent and they're in fear of me being violent, that doesn't mean I'm not being violent. That's why this, like at the peaceful protest, let me block traffic. Oh, we're not being violent. Well, you kind of are, because if I'm hauling my buddy or my kid, God forbid, to the ER because he fucked himself up and you're blocking my path, I'm not fucking stopping. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not sorry. I'm not going to apologize about it.
You who caused that violence, not the person trying to get his kid to the hospital.
Right.
You're responsible for
violence against me, and I reacted to it. I defended the life of my child because it was in threat, and you threatened it even further.
You might as well have him at gunpoint.
And I handled it.
Yeah. So
It has
that's a really good point. So you were violent. Let's while on the same line of thinking. Okay. So I think this is not a critique of necessarily what Jake was proposing, but of socialism in general.
right, right. I don't want to jump too
Um,
far off of that.
no. What not what you're saying. What I'm about to say is,
Oh, okay.
but um, I think okay, those systems work in a small scale. You have your household socialism. The father and the mother provide for the children. They bring in resources, and that's distributed
It's a
as needed.
dictatorship around here.
I don't know what you mean. I'm if I have kids, I'm making them compete. They're gonna have to.
Nice.
Okay. So not every household. I'm just saying that some households are like this. Um,
This also brings up another good point I don't want to jump too off of is technically we're talking about three different methods of raising our kids, and should the government be allowed to decide which one is right? That's another food for thought.
okay, yeah, we can bring that up in a second. Like, come back to that. Um, so, oh, and you can apply this to a community. It doesn't have to just be household. You have a small community. If one of us needs something in the group, as long as it's not unreasonable, like that's what your tribe is. You help each other out.
Mm,
The
that's what
problem,
it-
the problem when you get too large is I'm not comfortable going up the street and asking my neighbor for something. Like I don't even know him. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so if he has something and he doesn't want to give it to me, what happens is, and if I need it, the government steps in and takes it from him, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what we're getting at. And that's
Legally
violent.
assisted
That's
theft.
violent. That's violently enforced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
legally
Whether
assisted theft.
The government is built on violence. If you don't do what they say, they throw you into a little cell. And I mean, also, quick thing about like raising children that was mentioned. I don't know what three different things you meant, but those one of those things where I think you can actually find an empirical answer. You can raise children those different ways, study them, and find out which one is best for their health, and then enforce that one legally. And that kind of research and then enforcement can only be done by a government. Without a government, then there are going to be some messed up children walking around because
Oh.
no one enforced them to raise their children right.
there will be,
Well,
yeah,
not the government doesn't research anything.
That's a
Scientists
big
and
issue.
universities research things. Government funds things and makes laws.
Yeah,
That's where
big
this
issue.
kind of gets into the whole thing is when you're talking about, government is voted by the people.
Yep.
That is that that would be saying that our a democratic system is equal to a government, and that is just one system. A
Mm.
government is literally, I mean, to break it down, the word means mind control.
Mm.
It's truly what government means. It breaks down to the term. The word means control of the mind, of the mentality, of the mental state. And what it means is to harness the thought of the people into one thing, whether it be for the sake of the economy, the sake of power, the sake of taking over the fucking world, the sake of expanding your fucking place, the sake of helping the rest of it, whatever it is, that is what people do with governments. A lot of people base things and say, well, if you believe in democracy, and it throws them off a lot when you hear somebody say, well, I don't, because I don't believe in democracy. Democracy, and I freak a lot of people out when I say this, a very, very pure form of democracy is a lynching.
that's mob. What do you call that? Mob rule.
Mob rule. It's majority rules. The majority says, a lot of lynchings occurred after a trial where
Yeah.
someone was found innocent. And it wasn't always a black man. A lot of times it was a Republican. It was an abolitionist. And the town brought them up on some BS charges, and they had to go through the proper channels. And the judge was legit, or at least assuming to be legit, and they would be found innocent. and let free. But the rest of the town, the majority of the town said, no, this motherfucker needs to hang.
He's like,
And
hey
they
guys,
would,
I don't think we should have the power to lynch people. And they're like, get him.
right.
Yeah. Democracy doesn't account for most people not being experts in things. Like Brexit here was they just made it a vote. I think that was silly. Brexit is it's an economic decision. One, it's nothing to do with politics. It doesn't say anything about who can come in and out of the country. It was just pure economics. Who are we trading with? And they should have had experts decide that, which one would be better for the country.
Are y'all going to be involved with the EU? And I've had arguments with people here about it, and a lot of them don't understand. We have a similar situation with, I have to explain to them that most of our oil wars and things are based around that.
Mhm.
It's about the control of the economy. It's about our money, our
Yeah.
money system. Oil can't be traded on this planet unless it's done with the American dollar.
So you're back in England now, Jacob?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
So how is the economy there post-Brexit?
I mean, I on a micro scale, I'm not noticing too much of a difference. I mean, I know a lot of people have been laid off work due to COVID, and that's caused a lot of strife. That has kind of made a lot of people unwilling to buy things, which makes the economy go down. But I think with Brexit, we kind of made a bunch of trading deals with other places, and we're doing okay. But I am, once again, I don't really know enough about Brexit to comment on it, and that is why I don't think the general population shouldn't have voted. I don't know enough about Brexit to vote on it. Why did I get the option to vote on it? Leave it to the experts.
That's an interesting thing too.
Because your government enforces your economy. And for it to be legitimized, because if they were to do it on their own, then it would be a dictatorial move. Everybody that didn't agree with whatever they decided would be going absolutely apeshit.
Yeah, in a sense.
And
I
it's
mean,
the same thing here when people are talking about, let's force all these billionaires to pay to give up all this money. They shouldn't have it, and it's like that's kind of the same thing, y'all. You start to wonder, where does the line get drawn? And people are like, well, you can yada yada. Well, it goes back to your technology thing.
yeah.
The computer needs a number. The laws need a number. You cannot just, well, that's why I get a lot of people on the race issue. I say there is no legislation based on race. There's no legislation that tells me what the difference in a white and a black or a person of color is. And there can't be, because that is racist legislation.
Yeah, that's Jim
No matter
Crow.
how you look at it, that's what it is. You're talking
We got
about
rid of
Nazism.
that used to be legislation. We got rid of it because it was racist.
Right. And people say, well, that's because because the white man was doing better. Well, it doesn't matter. Racism doesn't mean you think that white is better. Racism means that you feel there is one of the most inherent differences between people in society is either how you view it, the tone of their melanin content, or their genealogy. And most people don't even understand either of those, so they just call it it's a black dude, So everything goes out the fucking window because it's all semantic.
Yeah.
I will say, so the law does not distinguish between colored people, non-colored people, anything like that. But actual people do, actual judges, actual juries do. And there is some legislation to do with, now I'm not actually sure where the power of this comes from, but diversity quotas? I think they're just in the company made, which I do agree with diversity quotas. Mm-hmm. I think the race of a company should match the general population if that company is fair.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's something we could definitely talk about more in depth. Go ahead and finish.
There's studies done showing that people are more inclusive of their own race. There was so this started in the 1990s and went on for about I think it was 20 or 30 years, where they sent out applications to different companies, and they sent the same application but has changed the name from a foreign name to a non-foreign name, things like that. and people would always have a slight bias towards their own culture. And if it's a name they couldn't pronounce, they usually wouldn't hire that person, which is, them not being hired based on something they can't control with identical CVs, resumes. And the diversity quotas try and fix this by forcing people to basically forcing the bias out of them to give everyone a fair opportunity. Because I think we all agree that there should be equal opportunities no matter where you're born, no matter how you're born, because it should be fair. Having said that, obviously countries don't care that much about fairness, otherwise inheritance wouldn't exist. Like, you wouldn't be able to give your child money, they'd just take it off you and be like, nah, equal opportunity, everyone starts with zero. But yeah, I think even though there are no laws to do with race, there are implicit there are biases that people don't even know they have. Like, you don't know if you're biased against a particular race until you actually, like, I don't know, hold a talent contest and then do an analysis of who you're voting to be the best and see if you have a bias.
So people have innate biases that they're not even aware of. So you have
Yeah, they can't control it, they're not aware of it, and that's why.
And from a scientific standpoint, it is virtually, especially now with modernized populations the way it is, it's virtually impossible to even conceive the idea of figuring out based on genealogy what is this and that, because we're all mutts. I mean, we're so mutt now that it's just ridiculous to even talk about the idea of, well, I'm this, I'm that. I mean, I make jokes about that I'm Spanish and Native Choctaws, Native American Spanish, because I'm Choctaw, Irish, and Spanish, and God knows what else is blended in there. But that's just what I've been able to
a little bit of
find
reptile too, probably.
Probably, who knows? But then there's, I mean, so I could sit and claim Native American stuff. I could claim Spaniard stuff because, I mean, that's not, and then I could look and say, well, that's technically Latin, Native American.
It's just like how
and
far back
Spaniard
you want to
bred
get.
to make the Latin people of South America. And, I mean, so does that make me Latin? I mean,
I think in your
so,
case,
I mean,
it's a bit of a
it's
useless label because
right. It's one of those things that,
not,
so what we end up talking about and defaulting to is nationality. People forget that Mexican is not a race. Mexican's a nationality. I hear so many people say things like, oh, he's racist, he doesn't like Mexicans. And I'm like, no, he's xenophobic. He doesn't like people from outside his nation.
And it's kind of just, so that kind of makes it kind of makes the media misrepresenting that kind of racist themselves, doesn't it?
Yeah, the media misrepresents everything. I mean, the term anarchism is thrown by the left and right all over the fucking place, and it pisses me off to no extent because I can't teach people about it because they're like either ready to grab a stick and go run in the street and beat the shit out of everything, or they're ready to give up everything and run off to the wilderness, or they think that I mean,
I'm glad that you're a fan of precise terminology. It makes it a lot easier to communicate with you, and you explain things if I don't know what they are. So I'm thankful for that.
And this is why I like talking with you, Jacob, because I don't like the idea of enforcing quotas on companies, but then you just now presented the most rational case for it I've ever heard.
Thank you.
And that's it's kind of sort of a controversial subject, but when you present it like that, I'm like, well, okay, I can at least see your point of view on this.
Yeah, if you want equal opportunity, sometimes you need to enforce equal opportunity, and yeah.
One of the grounds that starts to cross over with has to do with ecology, because while I am not a fan of laws, I'm not a fan of the EPA or any of those government agencies because I think they're all crooked. But the idea behind them, to because a lot of people feel like, like the anarchists thought, if, well, there's no government, nobody could protect the environment. Well, the government destroys a fucking environment more than anybody.
Yep.
The environment is my life, just like it's y'all's life. For someone to come and destroy it is a violent attack on your life, So if you're living somewhere and somebody shows up with a bunch of sludge and dumps it in the fucking little pond that you fish and get your food from, I mean, that's kind of the same grounds to me as them showing up with a machete or a rock and trying to beat you to death,
Yeah.
and the rest of your family. So, I mean, I kind of would react the same to that, So now where we've gotten in society technologically is, well, now we've got all this shit and we got to do something with it, because somebody just let everybody do this. And that would be the government that let everybody do this, because when most of these things occurred, somebody stepped up. For the most part, scientists in general were not bad people. The reason they became scientists is because they were concerned with things. They had a compassion for the world, and they want to learn how to make things better, easier, healthier, fix things. And they would warn things. Take Einstein and all nuclear physicists. They didn't want to build a fucking bomb. They wanted to figure out how to give everybody free power.
Yeah.
But the government stepped in and said, hey, we just saved y'all. Technically, we just picked y'all up out of this war that y'all were working for this government. Now y'all are either going to work for us or be fucking thrown in the clink as war criminals. Build a bomb.
Yeah, do it.
And that's,
just fucking do it.
That's how you end up with that. So
yeah,
every time you get government intervention, regardless of what it is, you end up with destruction and greed. Governments run the military.
Yeah, every time you come out with these big government ideas, Shirley, or Jacob, they sound really good, but like I have this tendency to just like, I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just paranoid, but like just
you can't trust the government.
They have
yeah,
that gets us into the AI thing.
So a quick question to Philip, if we have enough time.
Yeah, we got a couple of minutes.
You've been quiet.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So, do you like the media as it is, like the 24-hour news cycle? How the media is?
Do I like it?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think it's a good thing for society?
I fucking hate it.
Okay.
Aspect of it.
What would you want to fix about it, or if you could just tear it down and make something new?
Get rid of it.
Put in place. Yeah.
I think that
ban news or just wide open it.
I think the answer is no, like major news companies that get all this money that get bought out to like not report things. It should be like more on an individual level. Like there's actually a lot of YouTubers and like personal content creators. There's a guy I watch. He has a channel called The People. I actually highly recommend it. He's a Russian fellow. He he's a freelance journalist. He doesn't have anyone backing him, but he went to North Korea recently. He went to Venezuela. He went to China during pandemic was first breaking.
Let's jump down that hole of why that would be. Why is it that the mainstream media is the mainstream media?
Well, I actually
why is it that when I get on YouTube and I tell you or you get on there, why would it not be that?
Under my the system I proposed, the 24-hour news cycle wouldn't exist. The reason it exists is due to competition. They all try to outcompete each other for sensationalism and entertainment. And in the system I proposed, there would be no competition. So they would just report important news, things the public needed to know.
How would there be no competition?
There's no reason to compete with yourself. They just...
Do you understand why televised anything competes? What is it competing for?
That's an excellent question, and let's hold that thought. When we come back, we'll talk about the media, and we'll talk about guns when we come back.
Right after these messages from our sponsor.
Right after. Yeah.
Squarespace.
Yeah. So sorry for cutting you guys off like that. Okay, we're back again. And before we left, we were talking about the media. You guys were right in the heat of it when I cut you guys off. Do you remember where you were at?
Yeah, I was saying how, so under that system I proposed, the only media would be made by the government, which yes, is that rings all sorts of alarm bells for propaganda.
Mhm.
But one problem it does solve is the media won't be trying to compete with other news channels to try and get the most sensationalist story, the most sensationalist TV show. And I think in our society, a quick fix we can do just for the news, not for everything, but just for the news, is make it so you can only have like 2 hours of news, say a week, apart from emergencies. And emergency news has to be ran through the government. And what that would do is mean during those 2 hours, you are only showing the most important bits of news or the most entertaining bits of news. And it will stop this 24-hour news cycle where they have to sensationalize everything. They take the tiniest thing and make it seem so dramatic.
My
But
problem with that is my problem every time we talk about this. That is, don't trust anyone to like who decides what's in those 2 hours.
yeah, that's a fair point, and it is a hard question to ask. Who decides?
Can I
Because it always seems like you're just pushing the problem
can I ask
further and
you
further.
this? In Denmark or in any other places, do y'all have anything that is equivalent to our FCC?
I'm not sure. I'm not even going to pretend to know the answer. I don't know.
You know what the FCC is?
No,
The
no.
Federal Communications Commission. And that is actually our government controlling what we see. People think that we have freedom of press and freedom, which we do on a certain level. But as far as broadcast, it is controlled. People don't think it is.
It goes through
It
that.
makes sense. You
The
don't
FC
use outlet.
if I get on I cannot, running a computer, and this brings up the technology thing too. The internet screwed a lot of stuff up for systems. We can sit here, the four of us, and we can put this up all day long. What I cannot do is wire up, what I can physically do is wire up a broadcast system to actually fire waves across the world, off the stratosphere, and bounce off other towers to where any person anywhere who has a device that can power can pick up what I'm saying, completely unfiltered, completely unhinged. All right. The FCC will be in my house within an hour, kicking my door in and dragging me away, and I will be fined so much money. All my gear will be taken. Everything. The government absolutely controls our
Just
broadcast.
as a kind of comment on that. So there are two cases that I know of where the FCC has had to essentially hire the FBI to get involved in something, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But we have something similar here in England. I'm not sure in Denmark, but in England, they are so strict on advertisements. You are not allowed to advertise at all on kids' TV. You're just not. So that's why you pay a TV license here to pay for the British Broadcasting Service, which makes a lot of children's shows because they don't need advertisements. There are kind of advertisements in like the breaks between kids shows, but in an actual kids show, there is no product placement, nothing like that is allowed. There is extremely strict laws on advertising in general. And things like in America where they had Yu-Gi-Oh, which is like things like that, like Pokemon, where it's basically, it wasn't made to sell a toy, but it ends up selling a toy. They had a very big upward hill battle trying to get broadcast in the UK. The UK has to explicitly state when things are being advertised. They don't like advertisements on TV in the UK, and the kind of version that controls that, everything has to go through a thing that basically says if something is inappropriate. If it is inappropriate, it has to be on after a certain time, after 9, I think. Like if it's for adults, if it shows drugs or violence or something. And then the case where the FCC that I know of, I didn't know the name of it. I just knew that the FBI got involved when a TV company got hacked during an episode of Doctor Who in America. And this was actually kind of crazy because it was, the broadcasting service itself was hacked, which means that is a high level job. It costs a lot of money, and they left basically no trace. No one's ever been caught for this.
There's been some pretty
Broadcast.
wild jobs that have been done here, even back in the 80s with old real hackers. I haven't seen, you know, the kids that used to tell me they were into hacking have no idea what hacking is.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah,
that
well,
happened
nowadays
several
you can
times in the 80s.
download programs to do it
Crazy,
for you.
crazy. Your TV broadcast that you're watching, millions of people, cuts out and there's somebody else on there doing some shit. That's a huge thing.
Yeah, so this is basically what happened. They hijacked this broadcast of Doctor Who, and they replaced it with this creepy scene of, there was a mask, there was some violence there. It went on for maybe like 5 minutes and then went off. And this is kind of irrelevant to any like political points or any there's no conclusion of this, but that was just a case where they had to step in. They brought the FBI in trying to find this like broadcast terrorist.
Like, I remember this down.
They
Sorry,
broke broadcasting laws is what they did.
Mhm.
And those kind of regulations are so high level because what you're talking about is the ability to, first of all, the ability to put intelligence where they don't know without their ability. The government's all about controlling the intelligence. So if you're able to pop in and do that that happened during can't remember what show that I remember hearing back in the 80s. But if you're able to do it then, you're able to do it during a presidential address. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And if somebody was able to pop in during the presidential address and break off like you're talking about, if you had your manifesto broke down and bam, you just can pop in and be like, hey, everybody, fuck all that shit. Let me tell you how things should go. And you were able to just bam, but that would be, they would be losing their fucking minds. That's the worst thing that could happen for them. So that kind of control, and that brings around to the internet really did a lot of stuff. Facebook's really pissed me off. Social media's really pissed me off because nobody's ever signed a physical contract with them. So, but we can still have what we talk about on there or post brought up in court as legal documentation.
Well, actually, this is something I know a little bit about, only because my friend's a lawyer. And so in order to bring up, like, say, your Facebook conversation in court, there's a lot of strict procedures around it. Because if you bring an outside of court statement into court, it's hearsay. You need to prove an exception of hearsay to do that. So it's not like, with your Facebook conversations, if you said something like, I don't know, want some heroin, they could then also, I hate the war on drugs, just
Right.
putting that out there. But they couldn't use that in evidence directly. They have to jump for some legal loopholes. But yeah, are you, so you care a lot about your data being yours, right?
Well, it's not so much that because I can get in that's a different area, and a lot of people really freak out when I jump into the area of what I talk about with intellectual property and physical property.
We could talk
But I
about
don't want to jump over there yet.
intellectual property and law for like a whole nother podcast.
Right.
I want to.
Um.
What I want to talk
Yeah.
about right now is guns, because I had a pretty firm stance on guns, and I still
Oh
do.
yeah.
But I've recently been talking a lot with Jacob about guns, and that's what I love, is like, because I hear alternate points of view in very logical ways that it's refreshing. It's refreshing because you don't get a lot of that.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Do you want to just kind of like rant about gun control for a minute, Jacob?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. So my views on guns have gone back and forth so damn much, which either makes me the most reliable person to speak about it or the least. Because like at first I was anti-gun because I was raised to be anti-gun. That was about it. And then Alex convinced me that guns are good. And then
I think that was our last podcast together.
yeah, and then I like kind of started to think about it myself and what actually happens if you do, say if they just banned all guns, and how much damage do guns actually do? Do they need to be banned? And I'm talking about in context of America here. So I can kind of go against a lot of the points for guns. Like one saying to protect you from your government. Guns are not going to protect you from your government. Governments have way too much power. Their military could, for example, stop working for them if the government was that tyrannical. But also, you can't use guns to make the military stop working for the government. It's just impractical. The government has nukes. The government has tanks. The government has so many trained soldiers. It doesn't matter if you go to the gun range every day. You're probably not going to be as talented using a gun than a military soldier.
It's like ants trying to like fight a person.
Yeah, and the kind of guns you can buy legally in America, I assume, are not military grade. They'd be more like for hunting or more for how they look and how they are.
You're surprised on
Gun,
what you can
gun
get.
laws
Yeah,
here are
you'd be
really,
surprised.
really unnecessarily complicated, and I don't understand them. I'm not going to pretend I do at all.
This goes back to a lot of the perception versus um, actuality of our laws here.
Mhm.
We our First Amendment, people or it's the Second Amendment, excuse me, just like the First Amendment, people assume that it is completely upheld, that those rights are there, and we're just right now trying. It's like some of these nationalists are going off and saying, it's about my rights, my rights. They're not understanding that we do not have those rights fully, and we have not had them for a long time. They've been twisted, and you have to fight for them nonstop.
Yeah.
In a traffic stop, your Fourth Amendment right is constantly fought for. Every
Yeah.
time they say, "Can I search your vehicle?" Every time they say, "You have to give me proof of ID," your Fourth Amendment right is being, I'm assuming that's the Fourth Amendment right, it's being challenged right there. That is what our forefathers would have said. What in the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I mean the
Literally, those
forefathers
people would have been brought into town square and hung. Most of our politicians nowadays, not even based off some bullshit somebody dug up, just what they get out there and blurt, they would have been drug into town square and hung, and everybody would have cheered it, and it wouldn't have been a fucking like evil thing. That'd have been like, look, son, that's what happens when you try to be a fucking dictator.
Because
Because we
in
don't,
America, we don't celebrate authoritarianism.
not at
Yeah.
all.
Hey, speak for yourself, Alex.
Unless it's robots.
And that's the thing is, there's some nationalists that go so far on that side that end up doing that, and that's what you end up doing with extremism on either side. You end up
So
coming
I'll lay
back
down my
around to that.
point of view that I don't think civilians should have access to weapons. I don't think police should have access to weapons. And the main reason is you don't need to execute anybody really. I mean, even if you think capital punishment should exist, there should be a process to apply capital punishment, a trial, a system where you actually determine the person is 100% guilty, because people can get framed. It is more important to let guilty people go free than kill innocent people for crimes they didn't do. And guns are like, their only purpose is to execute, and you should not be giving that power to random people. And I don't think that power should really exist in a system, because the chance of you killing someone innocent is way too high. There are, just statistically, there are so many examples of guns being used incorrectly, and I don't think letting guns be legal just for hunting is really that good either, because that's a kind of a poor excuse. Um, I know a lot of people think about defending their homes, and I should have a gun to defend my home. But I mean,
Well,
it's
before we get into the standard
yep.
broad argument, let me go ahead and address the wording that you're using as it is.
Yep.
You don't think people should be allowed. You don't think the law enforcement should be allowed.
Yeah, they should not be. I don't think
By not being allowed, pretty much says someone must enforce someone attempting to break said rule. How is, if I'm not allowed to have a firearm,
Yep.
then how does someone enforce me not having a firearm
Use their firearm to enforce that.
if they're
I
not
disagree
allowed to
there as
have one?
well. In England, the police don't let you have guns, and
Right.
yet if you have a gun, the police will. Well, depending on what you're doing with the gun, if you go out there shooting, they'll get some special op team, some subsection of the
Right.
military to come fight you.
Uh-huh.
But if you, on the general, if I walk up like down the street holding a gun, a police officer won't go get guns to stop me. They'll just tackle me and grab it off them, and they are at risk of me shooting them.
Right.
But that's the kind of risk analysis that we work with here. They
Right.
say that, well, a police officer might get shot by a criminal, but
Right.
that's better than a police
Right.
officer
You're
shooting
saying there's
Now-
no situation where a police officer should be using lethal force.
Yeah, even in self-defense, a police officer should not kill
I
someone.
think I can agree with that. You,
Alright.
Yeah, they
you,
should use
you could just
No.
you could train
Right.
them better to deal with
And,
arms.
well, right, and that's the police discussion. That's the law enforcement discussion.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
trying to. So you're saying that only special, or you're saying military, which is technically you're not only allowing. All right, what you're doing here, and this is what, and I'm going by the Constitution, and this actually got changed not too long ago, and then didn't get changed once again, and then didn't get changed once again. As a fail-safe in America against tyranny, against true tyranny, against our government literally saying real oppression. Fuck y'all, stay in your house. We don't give a shit.
Yep.
You do what we say. You're not getting paid. Go fucking get in the fields and work, whatever. They would have to use the military. They cannot use the police. Police are not trained that way. Police are go home to their
100%.
wife and kids every day. Yeah, there's not enough of them.
Yep.
Any force that takes over uses a military. Our number one way to ensure a beautiful way to, and I'm probably gonna misnumber it. It's either the 13th or the 14th. I think it's 13th or 14th Amendment. One of the amendments. We are not allowed to have our own military operate on our own soil.
Mhm.
We haven't. That's
Right.
why our National Guard is different. Our National Guard is statewide and is controlled by our governors. Because it's a state level. Our federal government is not allowed until Bush.
Yeah.
Bush allowed that to occur, and that is a very scary thing. People don't understand how scary that is.
Mm.
All right. What it does is it allows our military to take action on our own soil. Now, that's not so scary as to think, military people. I know military people are very patriotic and they never turn a bullet on their fellow citizen, no matter how far one side or anything, unless they were actually killing somebody, because they're that nationalist and then that constitutionalist about that.
There's a lot on both ends of that. Yeah.
Right. So, but the problem that people need to worry about now is our intervention in other countries backed behind the UN, which is the world police.
Yep.
Is just that, is where a country decided to revolt or some power in a country rose up against the ability to stop them. And the UN stepped in because it was inhumane or yada yada, or whatever the bullshit that they wanted to tell us it was, because it was bullshit. I can guarantee you that. These governments are not about humanity. They're not about saving people's lives. They're about the interest of commodity, oil, opium, minerals, whatever.
Yep.
Okay. You end up having a situation now to bring it back to what you're talking about with the cops. One person has a gun walking down the street. That's fine. But what you have here is kind of touching on the keep yourself away from the military.
See, the military is
as far as keeping the military where the military is acting, or having them come in when the situation gets too high. If you have the ability, which we do here, I mean, it's literally impossible to sweep weapons out. You want to sweep every gun out. If they manage to successfully have a weapons sweep and take everybody that didn't want to give them and got everybody to turn them in, there will still be so many buried somewhere by militias, by
I agree,
gangs.
and that's the point I wanted to make.
You would end
So
up
phasing out
having,
anything.
right, you would end up having
Sorry.
territories much worse than what's going on in Portland, because Portland is really kind of a facade, to be honest with you. Um, when you get in a real deal mafioso style, because that's what that comes from, is, you know, the strongest people in the area protect the weakest, because the police cannot do it anymore. The police can't protect you anymore. They showed up and they couldn't handle it, or, you know, and I mean, that happens now. That happens all every day now in this country. They show up to robberies and burglaries and they're like, fill out a report, yada yada, and they leave, and nothing ever happens. Nothing, you know. So while that's a waste of time, um, you have organized crime that would, in essence, take over.
Yeah, so that's something I wanted to address because that is a big issue. And I like to kind of compare this to prohibition in America when they tried to ban something very popular among Americans. And it did two things. It made Americans drink probably more, and it caused rampant crime because they were like, well, we can't get alcohol legally, so let's get it from the mafia. And then it gave a lot of money to crime, and it meant that crime just rose, skyrocketed. However, I don't think a good excuse for letting your civilians carry around murder weapons is, oh, well, if we take it off them, they'll get even more dangerous. No, give it like 2 decades. And I believe that if you phase out guns, there'll eventually be none left. And I believe this because we've basically done it in every other country. You know, it's not like we still carry around swords. Weapons get phased out all the time. It's not a scary
Well,
deal.
Almost everybody I know carries some kind of weapon.
Weapons get phased out because
Knife,
we invent better
carry
ones.
chucks.
Yes, but like, you wouldn't trust the average American with a nuclear weapon because it's too deadly.
Well, I have a question for you, Jacob. Have you ever had to call the police?
Yes.
How long did it take them to get there?
Well, not really long. I was in Denmark. In England, let me think. I might be misremembering. It's a long time ago, but I think around like 10 minutes for them to get it.
There's a huge discussion taking place in America already about the police and whether they can truly protect us. And
So
the unfortunate reality in America in a lot of those situations is they don't get in time to be preventative. A lot of them don't even have preventative training. They're very poorly educated and trained. And it's mostly just damage control. It's not really preventative stuff.
Show up and file a report.
that's really sad. And I kind of get what you're saying. If someone breaks into your house and is going to stab you and kill you, you want something there to be able to stop them from doing that.
I'm gonna give you a personal example. We came home and my back door had been kicked in, like broken half kicked in. All right. Had I immediately called the police then and said, I haven't gone in my home yet, they would have sent units over on a 911 call to go bust and walk through my house to see nobody in there, but then they would have had access to my home. Okay. And they would have immediately started looking around my house to find anything that they could hit me with, just because, you know, that's what they fucking do.
Disgusting.
Yeah. So what I did was, well, you know, I happened to be with my family when we all pulled up together to discover this. Thank God. Told them to stay outside, and I went inside, ready to, you know, do some pretty fucked up things to somebody. So, you know, I run inside, run through the place, pretty certain it's going to be empty. You know, I'm not that fucking lucky to catch the son of a bitch, you know. So, run through, I realize everything's cool, and tell them to go ahead and come in. I'll start assessing damage, and I'll call the cops.
Yep.
I told the police what had happened. I told them my back door is kicked in half. I cannot seal my house shut right now. I need you to come out to file a report on this so I can fix it. Because if you change things, they can't file a report. Somebody can't look and get the clues they need to figure things out if they really wanted to fucking do this. Okay? If they really wanted to find this out. And I tell them, call me when you get here. Tell them to call me when you get here. I may not hear them knocking.
Yep.
The very next day, at some point in the morning, midday morning, I'm sitting downstairs by my busted up, my now sealed up back hole.
Yep.
Everything in place is cleaned up because I don't want to sit around with my knocked over gear that didn't get stolen.
Mm.
And because I had to assess what had gotten stolen and go through and,
Yep.
And I hear beating on my door upstairs, to which I go up and I find 4 detectives, and they're detectives because they're in on marks, standing there looking up at me like, as I open the door, like something's occurring. I said, y'all are a little bit late. Because at this point, I only really need one of y'all.
Mm.
And I didn't say one of y'all. I was like, I called y'all yesterday and I actually asked that y'all stop. Well, which 3 of them decided to not talk anymore, and they just kind of moseyed off and spent the next, I don't know, the 45 minutes, the one who took the report, hanging out by their cars and not doing shit. And he took the report. They all 4 walked around the back and told me, well, this is obviously this, and this is obviously this, and this is obviously this, and made all these assessments right off the cuff without having any info really from me whatsoever. Asked me if they could come in and look. I said, no, there's no reason for you to come in my home now and look around. I've already cleaned everything up, so there's no evidence you're going to get. And that was pretty much it.
That's a pretty common story with the police system here.
Right.
Yeah. So, quick question. So even if you don't agree with guns being phased out from people,
right.
It would seem like you would be okay with them being phased out from the police because they seem competent.
I'm okay with the police being phased out.
Yeah.
I'm okay with, and when I say that, a lot of people stop at police, but they don't want to stop where I'm talking about. I'm talking about law enforcement.
Now we're talking about anarchy.
I'm talking about pure anarchy.
Yeah.
I'm talking about pure, you don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Nobody is here to enforce that, because if we all know how to fucking live right, that's why the feudal world worked, because everybody walked around with a sword, and you didn't know if that dude could cut your head off quicker than you could his, so you just kind of bowed and went by your day.
You don't try it. Yeah.
I don't think the feudal world was a good way to live, and I don't think it worked.
It's kind of that way now here.
In a way, I suppose, because
compared to the war on drugs.
Alex told me something really interesting about so if you give guns to a place, crime will go down because people are too scared to rob people because they might have a gun, which is interesting, and it kind of goes it's kind of like like during the Cold War, no one wanted to attack anyone else because they might get attacked back, and it is a kind of false sense of security where everyone is too scared because at some point someone is not going to be too scared and bad things are going to happen. Now, I do think that if you take guns away,
people around that guy that can stop him real fast.
Bad things are always going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Just like an economy could be doing better than it ever did under some system nobody thought would ever fucking work.
It's a lot more.
And then some crazy fucking thing like a pandemic could come in and completely screw the plans up, no matter what kind of system you had in place. No matter how real or false something is, some unseen variable can always come in and screw your fucking plans up.
What's more efficient than a government regulated law enforcement system? A socially enforced vigilante system.
I would say I do respect anarchy a lot. Like it seems to, and like even feudalism to an extent. I used to think that was like the stuff. because it's so simple. Such a simple system, and it like
way
kind of
people with I like the way people with English accents say anarchy.
anarchy. Yeah.
I like the way you say anything. There's like I'm sorry, I had something but I lost it. Go ahead.
I had to throw that in. Sorry.
But yeah, I think the reason guns should be phased out is because the cost of having guns in a society are just too great for the benefits. Like, yes, you'll be saving some lives by being able to shoot criminals, civilians and police alike. But I don't think you should be encouraging your population to commit lethal self-defense. Maybe get them trained in some kind of like
Well,
promote martial arts training.
the hope is that
things
you won't. The hope is that you won't have to use it. It's more of a deterrent, like nukes.
Well,
yeah.
I mean,
So that's a fair point.
well, think about this now, because I was gonna say compare that to the war on drugs, because it's like saying all drugs should be phased out. I don't think heroin.
No,
is a good thing.
I hate the war on drugs.
I don't think I don't
I
I
think
don't
we're all
think
on the same page.
I don't think heroin is a good thing. Okay. Do I think it should be illegal? No, because the government, the police aren't phasing out heroin dealers. And to be honest with you, I would be much more effective as to going and finding my local heroin dealer and shooting him in the face.
like Taxi Driver.
Because
You
the
guys see
whole
Taxi Driver?
neighborhood knows this dude is there giving this poison, but because of yada yada, nobody can do anything. So one day everybody wakes up and he's laying there with no face on the fucking corner. When the cops show up to file their little report,
It's
who in that
ridiculous.
neighborhood's got anything to say?
No one said shit. And
I ain't seen nothing.
let's take another break. Hey, so we're back. We lost Jacob. He had to go, but he wanted to tell you guys. He said he had a good time talking, and that he had a lot of respect for you guys and differing opinions. Which that's something I really like about him, is presenting his ideas in a. He's just like, hey, I'm just throwing this idea out here to bounce off of you.
Absolutely. I really appreciated that and
Yeah.
respect his
It's refreshing because when you're a British guy telling Americans your opinions on guns, like
right.
it's just cool the way he addresses things.
But it also gives a lot of leeway. I don't have to. We don't have to go back and forth at each other because we can ask each other what the difference is over there. Because there's stuff I don't know about Denmark and about what goes on over there. I know about what goes on here by firsthand.
The last time I had him on the podcast, I was asking him about what the media reports about America overseas, and it's pretty much what you'd expect. It's a lot of
hyperbole.
Yeah, a lot of similar to how it is here, except obviously he was saying mostly it's local news. They don't talk about foreign affairs too much, but when they do, this is what it's. And I'm like, okay, that actually matches up with.
It's a real shame. I used to listen to when I listen to NPR here, which NPR has gotten very biased too. BBC would play. They would play BBC News. And I always like to listen to BBC News because you're not getting an Americanized perspective of America. You're getting and it used to, I used to find out a lot of stuff that, earlier than we would hear about it here that was going on here, because it was trying to be covered up here so much. And, these foreign presses are pretty crazy and they would find stuff out. But I watched it shift. I literally saw, like a lot of people did. A lot of people just turn a blind eye to it and just act like whatever. But you literally watch the mainstream media all bend down one pipeline and, basically start getting bought up is what they started happening.
Right. What do you guys think about the whole gun thing? Because I know, Neif, you would take it just full anarchy if we could have it your way. But in a system where we do have a government, do you think something like what Shirley's or what Jacob's suggesting would be better, or than what we currently have?
No, I think personally, I think we've tried too many things here, and the criminal element, no matter how you want to look at it, because some people don't see some crime as being a crime, and there's a lot of room for argument when it comes to victimless crime. So we have such a drive here of anti-authoritarianism, but and also nationality. So you got nationalism. So nationalists definitely will not, be down with that because it is in the whole idea that we should not only have access to weapons, it's not just guns, it's weapons. And these weapons should be equal to that of the government. We are supposed to be allowed to have a nuclear weapon if we could afford it. There's a big argument with why does America or the UN or whoever get to be the ones that run around the world and decide who gets to have a nuclear weapon?
Right.
Why are we the only ones that can point them at somebody else? And these people, and they're
Well,
only allowed so
the answer is power, right? We have the biggest.
right.
Yeah.
Well, and then that's questionable. That's because that's when you get in the military discussion. But I mean, in the war, in the Revolutionary War, we had no navy, virtually no navy. It was like 10 boats or something. Our navy ended up being French pirates saving our asses. Um, but that whole clause was not just about protecting us from our government. It was so that we were able to assist our government, which is supposed to be of the people. We are supposed to be our governing party where we just elect people to represent because we're too busy growing grain or whatever the hell we do, you know. So we just get some dude to go do it, and we're like, yeah, hey, you can have some state money. Everything's been convoluted for years, obviously, you know. So back then, part of that was you were told if you have a boat that can hold cannons, put some cannons on it. It wasn't just, make sure everybody's got a musket. It was to the level of you need to be our national defense because we are a young nation and everybody fucking hates us because we're criminals. We told the biggest power in the world, fuck you.
Yeah. And now we got to
Every,
back it up.
and now we have to back it up because they are coming for our asses. Everybody who signed the Declaration of Independence, every signature on there, as people understand about John Hancock and the whole my John Hancock, and it was huge. They understood if we lose this war, every name on here is hung.
Yeah.
Hung without question. We are all hung by the fucking king, and they will celebrate in England the day we get hung.
Yeah.
And that's why Hancock was like, you goddamn right, I know that. And that's why I'm going to sign my name bigger than shit because fuck them, bring it,
Yeah.
you know?
The biggest fuck you.
And that's what nationalism or real national pride was. It wasn't about this, we are a country and we're powerful, yada, yada. It was, no, we're
You have to
people that
band
are saying,
together in order to
fuck
fight
authority.
oppression. Right.
Right.
That's like the
We got
most
to
American
do
thing.
what we want to do. They're anarchist. I tell people all the time, Benjamin Franklin was the biggest fucking anarchist on the planet, you know? And he's one of the people that saved our asses in that war. But the way people talk now, it's almost like we should have lost. We shouldn't have been there in the first place, you know. Hear this shit. Same thing with Christopher Columbus, but Columbus didn't, as far as I know, didn't set foot on North America. I was making jokes about that. Was he like, what was he on the Mayflower or something? You know.
I don't know.
No,
I don't know enough about it.
It's that's what I'm saying. It's you know, it's hyperbole. It's people, just taking things to these extreme levels to try to emote, I guess, their
So,
feelings
do you
stronger than
think
anybody else.
do you think the government should regulate guns, or do you think it's important for people to have guns, or what do you think?
I mean, bears are always going to be a problem, and I know I can't fist fight bears, so I definitely think I would rather have an RPG, just to deal with the horde of bears. Or, flying sharks with lasers, those are pretty freaking, prevalent sometimes. Those we get swarms of those. So I definitely think, I need a whole ass Abrams tank, for that shit.
Right.
So I definitely think we should be on the level of our government. Like
Not
don't-
because of the government, but because of bears and flying sharks.
but because of bears and flying sharks, exactly.
If our
Right.
government
Because our
runs
government's not protecting us from those things.
right.
Yeah, we don't even hear about that in the media. When's the last time we heard about bear attacks?
Now, hey, think about this. If we were allowed, if the government ran as efficiently as it could and everything was as cheap as it should be, we'd all be able to be issued Abrams tanks. Right? Then we could drive to work and slow as hell. Don't worry about wrecks, traffic jams, nothing. Nobody's gonna fuck with anybody because everybody's got a fucking Abrams. But better than that, we don't even have to boast to the rest of the world. Nobody is gonna come fuck with us. The entire civilian populace drives Abrams. We don't even know which one have surface to air capable. We don't even know what the different capabilities, because they're all got allowed options and shit. So just getting near that country with an enemy something, it's gonna be fucking downed.
What if that's how traffic law works? Like the bigger vehicle just goes where it wants because fuck you.
Right. Well, I mean, if you got the right kind of lights, that's how it works. Cop can get away with ramming into you and killing you and your damn family. Oh, I was having my lights on.
Yeah, I know. I saw you. You hit me.
Yeah. I saw. So.
What do you guys think about Jacob's robot dictatorship thing? What was it? The Cybercratic party?
Cybercratic party.
Yeah. That's great.
No, I really think that at least what Jacob was talking about, I do agree with that, having some sort of program or computer program in place for the allocation of resources. Like he was saying, though, there would still need to be a human component. So I feel like even if we did have that, there would still be other issues. It wouldn't fix everything, but I do think as far as leveling things out so that you don't have things such as, well, ghettos and projects, so pretty much everywhere is doing about the same. I do think that is a I think it's a good idea to strive for, but along with a lot of other good ideas, it gets into how do you implement those ideas and how do you do it now? Because if you started that way, it'd be fine, but we are not like that. So how do you go about enforcing these things? And then you get into the enforcement. Is enforcement even right? And personally, I think that, as far as I really think that we don't need law enforcement. There really shouldn't have to be law enforcement. So
it's like socially enforced.
Right. And I feel like the people know what's right and wrong. And in the sense of like, lynching and things like that, where they took their, the majority ruled, I feel like that situation could work a lot better than people want to admit that it works. Just because it's been used to oppress sometimes doesn't mean that it's a necessarily a failed system.
It works if the individual thinks for themselves.
Can be used to oppress.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Like if you think about the mob rule, like, just let's vigilante just go take care of the bad guys ourselves, that kind of thing. I think that works if the individuals in that are actually individuals and their viewpoints aren't being hijacked or manipulated in some way.
Right.
And then that's when you get into education. And that's a lot of people fail to realize with this, is it starts with education, because we can change our view now. But as far as social change goes, you have to teach this generationally. That's when people get things mixed up about systemic. Things aren't systemic as they are generationally taught. the cops aren't systemically racist, as there's a lot of people with a certain level of education or a certain type of education that just demographically end up getting in this job. And
Mm.
that education that they got led them to believe whatever racist motives they have. And it's not necessarily always the motive where it's a supremacy. Sometimes it's a reverse thing. And it's not where, where it's like they feel less because of, you know. So therefore, then you've got that, because everything comes out on a negative, ends up on a negative.
Mm.
So the idea of people are having a big lash out now about abolish the police, but they wouldn't, most of them don't agree with me when I say abolish all law enforcement, because I say that means codes, that means child services. One thing that people didn't bring up during, a year or so ago, a couple years ago, when all the child separation on the border was happening, that child separation happens here by our government all the time.
Yeah.
And it can be argued whether it's a good or a bad thing. I mean, there's a lot of horrible situations. It's great that the kids got taken out of, but then
I
there's
mean,
many
it's a
situations,
good and a bad thing, right?
right? There's many situations where those kids got put into a worse situation and had worse outcomes. I mean, there's specified instances where kids were taken out of not a bad place. It was just a law got broken, not a bad situation. A law got broken. They were removed from that home and put into a situation where a law was being manipulated, and they ended up dying from it. The child ended up dying due to neglect, because, and that was a government assisted thing. Now, those people were not correct in their abuse of that system, but that system allowed them to. And that's the same way when you come into gun control. You're allowing. The system allowed it. So the system controls the guns. So therefore, whoever it allows to have them is under their complete custody.
Mm.
This is why it is the government's fault that the cops are fucking up. And it has nothing to do with systemic racism. It has to do with gun laws. If we had wide open gun laws and there was none of this shit, you couldn't really blame it on the government. The
Right.
government saying, hey, we didn't really have any stand in this. But the cops are set up like the military now. They got crazy ass weaponry that we can't have. If we have a gun legally on us, we have to tell them when we get pulled over, and they can draw down on us. And I've seen dudes get shot just because of that.
Yeah.
There's what's his name that got shot saying I'm a carrier. And they said,
It's
get your
Carl.
ID. And he reached for his fucking ID and they blast his ass, And that's one of those things where it's, it's beyond sad. It's sad for that situation, but it is absolutely infuriating to people like me that have been trying to scream at everybody about y'all are barking up the wrong goddamn tree when we need to fucking cut this forest down.
Yeah.
Y'all
Yeah.
keep
Looking at
barking up down.
the result, not the source.
Right. It goes, and then we get into the judicial system. Most of the problem isn't the police, it's the judicial system. And people are like, well, the police don't get away with it. Well, they get away with these crimes. Exactly. That's the judicial system's failure. They don't do the crime. They don't do time for the crime where we would. And that's a
Right.
failure of the justice system. That's not a failure of the police department.
It's not across the board.
The failure of the police department is the action that they commit in the first fucking place.
Mhm.
They hire dipshits that fucking get power hungry.
Well,
So,
it's been a nice conversation, gentlemen.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
you're awesome.
thanks as always for doing this, and thank you guys for watching. And do all the things. Go subscribe. We also have a Patreon if you like what we're doing here. So yeah, links below. Oh yeah, and Jacob Wilson, as you saw at the beginning, is a very talented mentalist, and I'll put up some stuff where you can find more of his stuff, because he doesn't only do mentalist stuff, he also does like illusions, card tricks, coin tricks. Yeah, it's absolute fucking mad lad. So, yeah, everyone have a good day, good night, whatever it is.